Hello and welcome, everyone. Our guest on this month's Thought Leader Talks is Susan Hanley, a consultant, author, and Microsoft Office Apps and Services MVP. Susan specializes in helping organizations build effective intranet and collaboration solutions using SharePoint. She's passionate about SharePoint and manages the very popular blog Essential SharePoint. Her areas of focus include information architecture, collaboration, and intranet strategy and governance. Hello, Susan, and welcome on the show.
Thanks so much. Thank you for your very kind introduction.
So,
and please call me.
Yes. Let's start talking about Microsoft 365. So Microsoft rebranded Office 365 to Microsoft 365 a year and a half ago. And many say it was a direct response to the remote hybrid majority workforce of our pandemic era. What would you say are the three most powerful collaborative improvements that were introduced in M365, particularly for the remote employee?
So first, let me say, I'm not sure it was a response to the remote hybrid workforce. Okay. I think it was more about providing a single productivity platform that includes Windows, Office apps, and more, such as Azure. So I don't think the name change really introduced this, but what the name change clarified is that from a licensing perspective, you're getting more than just Office when you acquire Microsoft 365. You're also getting SharePoint Online and Teams. And mostly we think of Office as Word and PowerPoint and that stuff. So it's a bigger, you're getting more. And so I think that could be part of it. So I think in terms of the other part of your question, I think in the past 2 years, Teams is clearly the most powerful collaborative improvement. And of course, Teams lives on a foundation that includes SharePoint and then optionally Yammer. So that all three together provide a really powerful collaborative environment for your users.
Yes, it totally changed the way employees can collaborate with one another. You have decades of experience in the SharePoint verse, and you've seen it evolve from a simple document management application to a powerful intranet for the modern distributed workplace. How do you envision SharePoint's future growth? What would be your wish list for SharePoint's roadmap?
So that's a big question. So, I can't envision the roadmap, but, SharePoint truly is the hero app for creating and managing intranets for a modern distributed workplace. As you noted, I've been working with SharePoint since SharePoint 2001. Wow. And it's incredible to me how far it's come and how far our thinking has evolved. So I'm currently working on a project to redesign an on-prem SharePoint 2013 intranet that I designed back in 2012. And we're bringing it to Microsoft 365. And, back in the day, we had to do a lot of customization to do things that are native to SharePoint Online. And I'm going to be ripping out a lot of those customizations because we just get them. In addition, things are so much easier to do now for end users that a lot of the pain points about using SharePoint have really been eliminated sort of one by one. I'm not saying that it's a perfect solution, but Microsoft has really been chipping away at all the things that add friction to the solution. So what I'd like to see, if you asked me sort of what is my wish list, if you had asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said global navigation. But we got that. So I feel like that was a little gift to me. One thing I would like to see is more out of the box Microsoft provided microservice apps for the Viva dashboard. I think the ability to bring in sort of micro interactions with the solutions that we are using every day is part of the incredible power of Viva Connections, which has a desktop element and of course a browser element and then the Teams element as well. So I'm super excited that the top news card is coming out next month, a card that will surface boosted news from the SharePoint organization news site. So I think that's really, really powerful, but I'd like to see more of that as well. And the other thing I'd like to see is more ways to easily distribute news to different sites and channels. Today, news distribution is very much, I have to go find it and then add it to my site, or I have to create it natively on my site. And my vision would be that I could publish news in one place and more easily from that central location, distribute it to places where it needs to be. So those are kind of, I mean, there are two sort of highly, one is very detailed and the other is more general. So two things that are, I mean, I tend to think about my wish list as minor little things and very big things at the same time.
A very detailed wish list and a great one. And, you know, you've seen both perspectives, especially since you've gotten your hands dirty, so to speak, so many times over building internet. So you know, in your extensive experience as a SharePoint consultant, what would you say are some, you know, of its hidden gems, untapped features that, you know, are not fully harnessed by organizations?
And that's actually a really great question. So I'm not sure that this first one is really a hidden gem, but pages. So pages are, you know, legacy intranets, let me take a step back, were largely about document management, and because page authoring was so complicated. So I see many organizations that kind of fail to take advantage of the ability to do storytelling in a very engaging way to present information. So pages over documents is kind of my mantra. I think it's time to blow up your documents and make them pages, because pages are easier to maintain and easier to connect to one another. And while you're there, use some page metadata to allow you to dynamically create connections between pages. And so pages and page metadata, I think, are relatively untapped. Another feature I think that we are not showing enough love to, let's put it this way, is Microsoft Search. And so my absolute favorite hidden gem of Microsoft Search is the ability to extract acronym definitions from text. There is search, actually, if you want to understand what does a particular acronym mean, if you know the secret handshake with search, the syntax that you have to use, search is going to look inside your documents for documents that explain that acronym and present it to you. Now, search also has the ability to define an acronym dictionary, if you will. So you could codify that as well. But you know, the idea that I could pull an acronym out of a document is incredible. But here's the thing, the handshake involves asking the question in the right way. So if you wanted to know what does ABC mean, you have to use the syntax, define ABC, what is ABC, expand ABC, meaning of ABC. There's a few different words. Maybe what is probably the easiest to remember. If you just type ABC in search, it's going to find words that have that letter combination in it. But if you type what is ABC, search is going to basically look around and say, hey, has anyone defined what that means? And then display for you at the top of search results the acronym and what it actually means, the words that A, B, and C represent. I mean, that to me, magical. And that most people don't know about it. In fact, just this morning, I was on a call with someone who works in IT at a very large organization, and he knows as much about SharePoint as I do. And he told me he just learned about what is syntax last week. So that to me is a huge hidden gem. And then one more, this is because these are the things I think people just don't really remember about. OneDrive. OneDrive Online is your file viewer of the world. And when I introduce, hey, have you gone to, you know, people are complaining, some clients will complain about not being able to find a file. And I'm like, you know, you don't have to know where it is. And if you just want to find a file, start at OneDrive, not the OneDrive that's synced to your desktop, but the app in Microsoft 365. And you don't have to know which team, which site, which person, if it's on your personal OneDrive, you will be able to find that content. So there's another magical, really magical hidden gem in the suite that people don't, even myself, I don't often think, oh gosh, if I'm looking for a file, I really should start with OneDrive, because that is going to give me a search scoped to just documents and any document that I have access to.
Yes, you're right. I have tried the last hidden gem that you mentioned, and it is amazing. I mean, especially when you really don't know where, who, what, or where it was shared, and you just search it and you get it. Yes, I do.
Yeah, but we think of OneDrive as the app that syncs our files to our desktop.
Yes,
we forget that it is the file viewer of the world. And I have to often remind myself that that is actually a super important thing in terms of training and making people aware of.
That's true. Talking about Teams and Yammer, what is your take on the Yammer versus Teams dilemma, especially for an SMB? What would you advise them to invest in?
That is a great question. And I'm just going to tell you that I have a very strong opinion about this. And I think the answer is both. Okay. Teams and Yammer are similar in that they have conversation at the root of sort of what they're helping you or enabling you to do. But they support very different use cases. One is teamwork, obviously Teams supports that, and the other is communities. So Teams, I believe, is for small work groups who are focused on creating deliverables and getting work done. And Teams is also magical. It brings together, or it can bring together everything a team needs to get work done, including, by the way, the SharePoint site that lives behind Teams. And that's another sort of untapped hidden gem. We really should start thinking about bringing our pages into the Teams tab so that we can kind of get the best of both capabilities. And with a team, you typically know the people with whom you are collaborating. Right. Yammer is designed to support broad, open, cross-functional communities of any size, but where people share a common interest or skill. And it is far better suited for communities of practice and cross-functional knowledge transfer and knowledge exchange, where Teams is better for collaborating on a specific project or task. I don't think it's an either or. I think it is a both and. And the reason I think you can make this work even in a small organization is that you can bring Yammer into Teams with the Communities app. And so you do not have to go anywhere else to engage with your cross-functional communities of practice. So the other thing is that Teams conversations in general are by nature meant to be quick and help keep work moving forward. But Yammer conversations tend to have a longer half-life. And while I don't think they never expire, they tend to live a lot longer in terms of value. So since you can actually bring Yammer into Teams with that Communities app and bring Yammer conversations into SharePoint, that is also a superpower that Teams does not have. So a Yammer conversation can be embedded on a SharePoint page to bring the conversations around a topic into the informational space about that topic. And Yammer conversations are also part of the Viva Connections feed application app, that new app. So I don't think this is an either or. I think it is a both and. And I am not a huge fan of organization-wide teams because I don't think that exists. I think a team is a small group of people, little team. Typically a team should be private because it's really designed around the people that are working together, and where people really get themselves into trouble, and I literally had to fix this yesterday, is when they create some public team not realizing what they did, which is in fact give edit rights to the content, every single bit of content to the entire organization. And so we need to sort of I think obviously we need to sort of encourage people or explain to people the benefits of each type of collaboration space, but they each serve a different purpose. And I think we can deal with that even in small organizations.
This is great information, especially for an SMB, the ease with which Yammer can be, because some may, balk at the thought of, that it would require a whole big, and it's too big, they're too big for their boots, so to speak. But yeah.
I mean, I had a conversation with a client yesterday. They were very concerned about bringing yet another sort of app into the mix. You know, the beauty of the Microsoft 365 suite is that they're all connected and they work better together. And so I think we're going to see a lot from Yammer in the coming year. And I think we should not rule it out as a very effective cross-functional community of practice basis for making those connections, even in a small business.
Great information. So you've spoken, you've extensively given presentations about intranet governance and talks. What would you say are the 3 blind spots that organizations have when they chart out their intranet governance policies?
All right, I'll give you number one. Number one is that you think you can be successful with an intranet without thinking about governance first, right? The very best designed intranet is going to deteriorate the day after it's launched. And if you don't have a good governance and content management plan, you are going to, again, you're just going to watch your experiences for your users deteriorate. So governance should be the first thing you think about. And then the other thing, big, huge blind spot, is that people think governance can be planned by IT. Oh no, that is only going to lead to failure. Governance has to be a partnership between the business and IT, and the part of IT that focuses on information security. Because if you lock things down too much, people are going to work around to get things done. And that is actually worse than having the conversation to understand what is the business need and how can we accommodate it. Not how can we lock it down or block it, but how can we solve this business need in a secure way to eliminate sort of shadow IT and putting our information at risk. You know, the most valuable asset we have will put at risk if we don't partner with the business to understand what we need to accomplish. And I guess the third is that people think you can communicate governance in a document. Believe me, if you create a governance document, it will not help you create a well-governed intranet because no one will read it. It is going to be a doorstop that will maybe be effective at keeping your door open or closed, but it is not going to be effective as a way to communicate. So governance, it really should be baked in to your solutions so that people can't make mistakes like sharing content that shouldn't be shared someplace they shouldn't share it. So ideally, you try to bake it in, and where you can't, you want to provide it to people just in time as they need it. So I think good governance needs to be delivered as guidance that people can consume when they need it. And I think you do that not with a big giant document, but with short, clear, did I emphasize the word short, web pages in a SharePoint site that allows people to understand both how to, how do I upload a file? Well, hey, before you upload a file, what are you calling it? And did you put a version ID in the name? Oh, no, we don't do that. Did you put a date in the name? Oh, no, don't do that either. Because then if you update that file and change the name of it, all the links that people are using to get to that file are going to break. And so I think we really want to use the tools that we have to create governance pages. I want to deliver governance in a reusable website, not a big giant document, so that we can combine how to with how should.
That they don't just see it as a checklist, like a tick mark off their checklist, but something that is
well, living and breathing, and that you can update. And here's the thing about governance in Microsoft 365. Microsoft is constantly making changes that give us new sort of knobs and dials that we can turn from a governance perspective. Many of those are going to impact the end user experience. Not all of them, but many will. And so we need to sort of think in mind that the other sort of, I guess this is a fourth thing, is that governance is set it and forget it. It's not. You have to really pay attention to what is changing in your cloud platform to make sure that you are A, tweaking the settings that may now become available to you, and B, communicating about them to the people who need to know. And so it takes a village to be successful with an intranet, and governance, needs that whole village to be to deliver the business values we want to deliver.
That's well put. So talking about Microsoft 365 and SharePoint data protection, how essential would you say it is for organizations, especially in view of the shared responsibility model for those who have moved from on-premise to the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, I think data protection is obviously important for all organizations. It's amazing to me how we often allow our information to deteriorate. And yet if a chair is broken in a conference room, we're going to get that fixed right away. So I think it's important for all organizations, but it is more critical for some organizations than others, such as those that are highly regulated. And so when you distribute responsibilities for content management, I think you also need to consider helping people do the right things in terms of creating great user experiences, but also in protecting the organization's critical information. So I think it's important for all, but it's sort of really important for some organizations more than others.
Given great insight, Sue. It was lovely chatting with you, and thanks a lot, for all the. I'm sure our viewers watching it, especially from SMBs to enterprises, would really find this very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.